Hello everyone, welcome back again. Today I'm going to be making one of these steampunk style stitched hearts. These are really pretty and they are super easy to make and easy to size as well. I generally make them as pendants, but I do have these tiny ones here that would be perfect for use as earrings or charms. Now, the detail on these can be a little bit tedious, but overall, I think they are definitely worth the effort. You will notice that these two do not have eye screws in them. I forgot to place them before I baked them, but I am just going to put these in my craft supplies because they also make great craft embellishments. So let's get started. To get started with this tutorial, you will need a small lump of clay. And for tools, I am going to be using a straight pin and a toothpick. You will also need a pocket knife or some kind of cutting tool. And then something to roll with, and I'm just using an old paintbrush as a roller. You will need an eye hook to go in the top for hanging. And to stitch these together with, you are going to need a length of wire and a pair of pliers. And I am using copper wire. This is 24 gauge, but you can use any wire that is pliable enough to manipulate with your fingers and small enough to get through the hole that we are going to be making with the straight pin. I have used stainless steel and floral wire in the past, so feel free to improvise if you need to. And we're going to start with 2 balls of clay that are about the same size. They don't have to be perfect, but each one is going to form 1/2 of the heart. So using my finger, I am just going to roll this into a point on one side, and you'll notice that I'm keeping my finger as close to the pointed end as possible because I want the other side to stay nice and round. And the same thing with the other piece. We're going to roll it into a point and try to keep it as evenly matched as possible with the first one. And then we're going to fit these together to form our heart and lay it down. And now we're going to flatten it out a little bit. And I like to use my finger and I just start on the rounded tops and push them down. And then we're going to go through and just smooth out the whole thing, perfect the shape if you need to, and go ahead and round off all the edges. Now we can come through with our straight pin and we are just going to mark the holes for the lacing. And when you're doing this, you want to do it in multiples of 2. So every multiple of 2 that you use is going to be 1 X stitch on the front with a close on the back side. Now, if you're doing tiny ones, then just do 2 holes on each side. I generally use 4 on these, but if you're doing one significantly larger, you can even do 6. Another thing to pay attention to is the spacing between the holes. That's what's going to determine how big or small this X stitch is on the front. And I usually keep mine pretty evenly spaced. So I'm just going to come through and mark my first hole, and I'm just going straight down with the pin and then twisting that ball end a little bit. And then I'm going to measure that up to the other side and put in my second hole. And you'll notice that I am not too close to the seam either because we don't want these to break when we're stringing the wire through them after they're baked. So I've marked my 3 holes on this side, and I'm going to go ahead and again, just make sure that you're pushing that straight pin straight down. You don't want to push it in at an angle. And when you're spinning the top, spin that nice and straight too. You don't want to wiggle it back and forth because that's going to widen out the holes. And for the other side, it's really important to measure these up so that they are evenly spaced on both sides as well. That way your lacing will be nice and even when it's done. And once our holes are marked, you can go ahead and pick these up, and using the straight pin, we are just going to follow each one of these holes through to the back side. Just push your straight pin through there and just very gently move it back and forth so that that hole goes all the way through. So now that the holes are marked out, we can start adding some texture all the way around the border of both halves of the heart. And to do this, you're just going to take your straight pin and start gently poking some tiny holes in the clay. And you do want a lot of them, so just start poking away. You want them really randomly spaced, and you want to pay attention to your depth as well. Some of them should be a little bit deeper than others. So, and we're going for kind of an aged pitted stone texture, so you don't want anything that's too uniform or too symmetrical. So no straight lines. And just follow these up on the surface a little bit. When you're working around the holes that you made for your lacing, you're going to want to kind of dabble those outwards. And again, just work all the way around the perimeter on the surface and also along the edge of both halves of the heart. And this is what they'll look like when they're done. And I realize that you guys can't see this super well because my clay is white, but I've just textured all the way around on both halves. And now we can set these aside and start working on the surface pieces. So go ahead and take another small piece of clay, and we are just gonna roll this into a flat sheet. And you don't want it super thin, but you don't want it too thick either, or it will stand out too far on the surface of the heart. And once you've got this rolled out, just take your cutting tool and cut out a few nice even strips. You don't want them too wide or too thin. And we're only going to be using a very small piece of this, but I tend to cut out well over the amount that I need because I tend to make mistakes over the next few steps, and it also allows for you to kind of play around with different sizes to get the look that you want. So now that our two strips are cut out, take your toothpick and just run a line of dots along the edge of both pieces on the top and the bottom. And this is where I tend to make the most mistakes because it's really important to keep these dots not only in a straight line with the bottom, but also evenly spaced on the top and the bottom. And this one actually doesn't look too bad, so I probably won't even need the other piece. And now we're going to come through with the cutting tool, and we are just going to cut some nice straight lines and cut this into smaller pieces. So when you're cutting in the middle like this, you want to place your blade kind of in between those dots so that they're still evenly spaced on both pieces. And just cut them into some little strips that are small enough to go onto your heart. So go ahead and set those panels aside, and the rest of our embellishments are just going to be made from these little balls. So you're just going to want to roll out a whole bunch of balls in different sizes, and we probably won't use all of them, but just go ahead and roll out a whole bunch of different sized ones. And once you've done that, we can start placing the embellishments on the hearts. I start with the panels, and you can really place these wherever you want. I'm gonna put this one sideways, and I'm just lining it up with my laces and sticking it on there. And then for the other half of the heart, I like to make the panels go in different directions. So I am going to put this one facing upwards towards the top. Get that stuck on there. And then we're going to take some of these larger balls of clay, and those are the ones that we are going to use for the screws on the panels. So they don't have to be the same size. Just make sure that they're a good size where you can stick them down without them being, too large or too small on this panel. And the same thing with the other side. Just grab one of these that feels like a good size for the panel, and you're just going to roll it nice and round and stick it on there, and then very gently press it in. Like that. And for the remainder of the embellishments, I like these balls to be a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to go through and trim these down into something a little bit smaller to work with. And for the rest of the dot work, you're just going to place them randomly in these empty spaces. And you don't want to use too many. You don't want to place them too close together. And you don't want any two pieces of the same or similar sizes right next to each other. So I'm going to put this larger one right here. And then this smaller one, again, spacing it out a little bit, I'm going to put here. And on the bottom where there's not that much space, I am just going to add one of these small ones. And this half of the heart is pretty much done. I am going to make these screw heads for the ones that we put on the panels. And to do that, you're just going to take your straight pin and lay it flat on its side and just press a little line into the center of this dot. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. If you want to go back in and do another line in the opposite direction for a Phillips screw head, that would be fine too. And the rest of these dots, we're just going to place randomly on the other piece. Now, as a final step on these, you will want to take your straight pin and add some more dotting texture just around these panels. Now we can start placing the eye hooks, and you can see on these ones that I put them on the side. You can put them on the other side for them to hang the opposite way, or if you want, you can place them closer to the center so that they hang straight. I like the way they hang from the side. And to do your eye hooks, if you used a panel like I did on the one side, then you're not going to have a lot of room there. So I'm going to use this one, and I'm just going to put the eye hook right in the center here. You want enough clay on both sides of it that it's going to be well embedded and not break. This heart is finished. It's ready to go in the oven. You can check your specific clay for baking instructions, but I'm going to bake mine at 275 for about 15 minutes. So now that this is baked, it is much easier to see the detail on it. And before we start wiring these together, we are going to take our straight pin and just kind of clear out these holes because we did all the detail work after. You just want to make sure that you can get that straight pin all the way through there fairly easily. And so we're going to poke them through the front side on each one. And then we're going to also turn them over and go through the back side. This is going to make it much easier for our wire to go through because the wire is not nearly as stiff as the straight pin. So to stitch these together, you're going to take your wire and you're going to put one end through the bottom hole and going through the back side and just string that half of the heart on there. And then you're going to do the same thing with the other side. You're just going to place it through the bottom hole, again, going through the back side. and string that one on there. And then pull both of these down to the center, and you're going to fit them together nice and snugly. And then holding them together, you're going to fold them inwards so that they match up like they're supposed to. And that is going to bend that wire in the back so that it's nice and tight around them. And now we can just start lacing. So I am going to take this piece and I am just going to feed it through that second hole on the other side. And once you get it poked through to the back, you can take your pliers and grab a hold of it and just kind of pull it tightly. And the same thing with the other side. You're just going to feed it through that second hole and then grab it with your pliers and pull it tight. And you can tug on these a little bit. They should be pretty sturdy. You don't want to tug on them too hard or they will break. I guess it just depends on what kind of wire you're using. Mine is pretty pliable. And you're just going to continue stitching all the way back up to the top. When you get back to the top, both pieces of your wire will be coming through the back side. And this is what it looks like. And then on the back, we're just going to take these wires and tie them into a knot. And this is much easier to do if you have two pairs of pliers. It can be done with one. It just takes a little patience. And once I get this tied, I'm just going to feed the ends back through this first X here and kind of press them into the center so that they're not catching. Now for paint on these, I always start by painting them flat black. I do a 360 coat of solid black all the way around. So I am going to do that, and then I will be back with you guys for color. So here it is, and I actually used 2 coats of black. This is apple barrel paint and jet black, and now I am going to hit it with some color. And I think I'm going to do this one half and half. And it's important on these not to apply your paint too thickly. We want that black base coat to still show through on the finished piece. So this is a Folk Art brand paint, and it's one of their Color Shift ones. It's a Color Shift metallic green. And the other side of the heart I am going to do in blue. So this is another Folk Art metallic, and this one is called Blue Sapphire. And again, I am just kind of brushing it lightly on here, making sure that that black base coat is still showing through. And then I'm going to come through with a little bit more and just make this color a little bit brighter on the top here and right in here by the stitches. And I'm going to do that with both colors. And for the embellishments, I am going to paint this upward facing panel. This is another Folk Art metallic in gold. I'm going to do this one in gold, and I'm going to do the other one in bronze. And then I'm also going to do this screw head will be bronze and the other screw head will be gold. And the remainder of these little dots, I am going to use apple barrel and lime green. So here is the finished piece, and I am so happy with these colors. I love the shine, and I think that lime green really brings everything together. That's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and feel free to comment below. Thank you so much to all of my subscribers. I can't tell you how grateful I am for all of your support. To those of you who haven't subscribed, please do. I've got lots of great new videos coming up very soon. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas, and I will be back with a new video just after the holiday.